Welcome back, dear students, for the social class. Dear students, in the last class, we were studying about the fundamental rights and duties in our constitution, in which we were studying about the fundamental rights, in which we studied about the 5 fundamental rights. Dear students, today, in this class, let us begin with the 6th fundamental right, that is right to constitutional remedies. So the Constitution has not only given fundamental rights to the citizens of India, but also it guaranteed them under Article 32. So whenever the rights are violated, either by a person or any state government or the central government, the citizen may appeal directly to the Supreme Court for their protection. So Dr. B.R. Ambedkar has called this right the heart and soul of the Constitution. So if any individual or the government at the center and states appear to violate a person's right, he has a right to approach the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is empowered to enforce the fundamental rights. So, it is called the protector of fundamental rights. Which is called as the protector of the fundamental rights? The Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is called as the protector of fundamental rights. So even the high courts have the power to pass the following rights under the Article 226. Let us study one by one what are the rights the high courts have been given. The first one is habeas corpus. So the order passed by the Supreme Court or the High Court to produce a person within specified time frame is called habeas corpus. So this protects the individual right of a person. So which means the order which is passed by the Supreme Court or any High Court, that person can appeal in the next court. The second one is mandamus. So this is when the legislature or executive or any other subordinate institutions fail to perform certain duties or works, the Supreme Court or the High Courts orders them to perform these works. This order is called as a mandamus, but the order cannot be passed against private individual or governor or the president. So which means the governmental institutions fail to work, the high courts can order them to do it in a better ways. The third one is prohibition. What is this prohibition? When a subordinate court passes a judgment beyond its jurisdiction, or the judgment is against the sense of natural justice, the higher court passes order against such judgment. The order is called as prohibition. This can be passed against the lower courts by the higher courts. So which means any lower courts judgments are not correct, the higher courts can hold them or can ask to reconsider the case. So that is what prohibition. The fourth one is certiorari. So when the subordinate court pass judgments beyond their judgments or against the sense of the natural justice, the higher orders the submission of records related to that judgment to it. This order is called as a certiorari. So which means if the judgment is not correct, if the higher courts finds the lower courts are not doing properly, the higher court can ask or for the clarification. Also it can ask the records of related judgment. The fifth one is cowarrant. What is this cowarrant? The order directing the right person to occupy the right public office is called as cowarrant. So it is an order to take up the particular job by the particular person. So that is called as the cowarrant. The high court can order the officers to take charge of the particular or the specific office matters. The order is passed against the persons who hold public offices illegally by the higher courts. And the public interest litigations can be filed in courts in order to protect the social rights denied to citizens and to protect public interest. So any public can file a case against the public property or a public rights, social rights. So public interest litigations can be filed for the purpose of protecting legal rights that are essential to protect life and to protect environment from being polluted. So the person can appeal or file a case against any person who is violating the nature as well as the environment or the rights of any individuals. So these public interest litigations can be filed by individuals and social institution. In recent years, we see that the courts on their own or the filing such public interest litigations when situation arises. So these cases or this can be filed by an individual or any of institutions, but the recent years or recent days the courts themselves fill up the cases when it is necessary. Now dear students, let us study about the fundamental duties of citizens. Fundamental duties of every citizen. The rights and duties are the two faces of the same coin. So we need our rights and also we have the rights or the duties to fulfill. So rights without duties have no value or significance. So we had 10 fundamental duties were included in 4th chapter, that is A part, Article 51A, with the 42 amendments, the Constitution with the 86th amendment in 2002. There are now 11 fundamental duties. Let us study about one by one. The first duty of a citizen is to respect the Constitution, national flag and national anthem. So we should have a respect for all these things. And the second one is to follow the noble ideals that inspired our national struggle for freedom. So we have several inspired ideals during the freedom struggle. So we need to follow them. The third one is to protect the integrity of India, the heritage, the honesty we need to cultivate. To defend the motherland when called upon to do so, when it is necessary, we need to protect our motherland, India. The fifth one is to promote the spirit of a common brotherhood amongst all the people of India and disown those rituals that go against the dignity of a woman. So we need to foster the common brotherhood among all the Indians, and also we need to overthrow the superstition or rituals that are existing against the women. The sixth one is to preserve our ritual heritage. Preserve our rich heritage. The seventh one is to protect and develop environment including forests, lakes, rivers and wildlife, and show compassion to animals. The eighth one is to develop the scientific temper and the spirit of inquiry. We need to develop the scientific temper, the scientific attitudes in the students and also in every citizens. To safeguard public property and to obtain from violence, our duty is to safeguard the public property. The 10th one is to strive towards excellence in all spaces of individual and collective activities. To strive towards excellence, we need to do it better ways. The 11th one is the parents or the guardians should provide an opportunity for education to their children from the age of 6 to 14 years. So it is the duty of parents to educate their children. So unlike fundamental rights, there is no protection from a court of law with regard to duties. However, there will be punishment under a law for those who violate their laws. So if you violate your law, then there is a punishment for a particular person. Then let us see about the directive principles of the state. Directive principles of the state. So when an aim to establish a welfare state, certain directive principles of the state policy have been incorporated in the constitution under the fourth part from the 36 to 51 articles. So we need an directive principles to establish a state. So for that, principles are given in the fourth part from the 36 to 51 articles. The principles serve as a guidelines to the state. The framers of our constitution were inspired by the Irish constitution to include such directive principles. So these directive principles are taken from the Irish constitution. So these directive principles are in the form of directions to the central and the state government. It is a direction, it is a guidelines. Through these, the government intends to provide economic, social and political justice to its citizens. But these principles are based on ethics. So we need to base on something. These principles are based on ethics. So if the government, center or the state do not implement them, they cannot be questioned in the court of law. So these principles are socialist and liberal and have been based on Gandhian ideals. Any individual or party that comes to power has to rule keeping these principles as guides. Hence these directives are called as principles. So now let us study about these principles one by one. To provide adequate means of livelihood to all citizens, the government has to provide the livelihood, adequate means of livelihood. To prevent the community wealth and resources from becoming the private property of a few people. So the wealth should not be accumulated by few people and it should be distributed for all the people of India. To provide equal pay for equal work to both men and women and to protect labor welfare. So we need not to distinguish between men and women. So we should pay equally for both men and women. To provide public assistance to those who are old, sick and weak or helpless. So the government should assist to give a helping hand to those people who are not able to satisfy their needs. To implement a uniform civil code throughout the country. So throughout the country we need to have a same civil code. There should not be any differences. To provide opportunities for the development of health and preschool education to all children below 6 years. So we also provide, the constitution also should provide an opportunities for development of health and education. To protect historical monuments and maintain places of historical interest, we need to maintain and protect the heritages. To separate the executive from the judiciary, so judiciary and executive should not go together, but they should be separately, should be working. To protect the international peace and to respect international law, we also know we have to foster the international peace and respect international law also. To establish grama panchayats, we need to have a grama panchayats at the base, grassroots level. To encourage rural and cottage industries, nowadays it is disappearing, but we need to encourage rural and cottage industries. To organize and develop agriculture and animal husbandry on modern lines. So organize and develop agriculture and animal husbandry in modern lines with the help of scientific equipments. To ensure prohibition of liquor, we should prohibit the liquor because the liquor spoils the family. To ensure development of farming based on scientific methods. So we should help the farmers to use scientific methods in order to produce more in their farms. So these are some of the directive principles of the state policy. The directive principles of the state policy are implemented. So they aim to achieve social welfare, while fundamental rights relate to an individual. The directive principles state policy relate to the whole community. So the central and the state government are making attempts to implement all the principles. So these principles aim at holistic development in India. So they are the indicators of holistic development of India. So dear students, as a result, our constitution is the biggest constitution in the world, or largest constitution in the world, and also elaborated way and systematically written down everything for the welfare of the individual and the society. So dear students, let us complete this lesson, our constitution here, and begin the next chapter, the next class. Thank you very much.